It is a Wednesday edition of the Bernier program. The subject of bullying being covered for the second time this week involves what we learned from this experience and the long-term damage. Emily Madill is a best-selling author and a contributor to the Marc Bernier radio program and has written extensively about that and has some great feelings about it. We've asked her to join us live today on WNDB. Hi, Miss Emily.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Good, thank you. To start, were you a victim yourself?
Yeah, I definitely had my turn at being bullied. I think I was in about grade 6, and, it didn't last long, but it definitely left a mark, and I think, it certainly contributed to me having empathy for others, I would say.
We had people, after we did our first interview with Heather Bevan the other day, say, why not stress more that people need to learn how to defend themselves so they're not victims. When you hear something like that, what's your reaction?
Well, I think, the best way is to work backwards, back through to empathy, and, really go back to teaching rudimental life lessons. I think when youngsters and teenagers, hopefully we would learn it when we're younger, learn about empathy and accountability, really instilling those positive behaviors in kids is what's going to stop the madness. Stop the cycle.
That's okay if parents are engaged and will do this. I concur. But how do you handle it if you're on the other end of it and these are people who just don't subscribe to good parenting, teaching, and setting good examples? What do you say to the person who has been the bullied person?
That doesn't have any support around them?
Well, a person who's been bullied, who's been victimized, how do they pull themselves out of what could be not only depression, but a long-term harmful effect?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think, having other support networks out there, like having, a trusted adult that they can go to and talk to. I mean, you would hope that in schools there would be counselors and, a trusted adult where they can really go and talk their problems through and, create the awareness of the situation. And really, I think, Mark, what happens a lot of the time, too, is that, there's this mob mentality that goes around, and a lot of other kids witness these things happening, and that is, I think, a part of the large problem is people, other kids, the bystanders, not standing up for kids and saying, like, hey, that's not okay, and stopping the bullying behavior in its tracks. I think that's what needs to be, more of that needs to be created.
So we need to encourage those people who witness the bullying of others to discourage this from happening. And
to stand up, because I think they're playing just as much of a role in it, and I think everybody has that piece inside of them, that place in their stomach where they know in their gut, like, hey, this isn't right, what's going on around me, and to stand up. Like, there are kids that do stand up, and I think lots of kids are probably afraid to kind of make that stand, but the more we make that be the norm, that it's good to voice your opinion, it's good to stand up for others, like, to bring it back to that compassion. Like, imagine what it would feel like to be in that person's shoes, because that's a lot of what's missing today is empathy.
I think you just hit it, that people who are not empathetic to other people's misery or to their loss or to their situation, I think we have a society, I don't know if it's like this where you are, but there's a growing problem in this country where it's all about them, and they don't stop to look at the long-term effects of their actions and decisions. As it relates, just briefly, I wanted to ask you about cyberbullying. I do notice that when I don't go into chat rooms or anything like this, but I have noticed that when you hear people make comments that are negative or they're bullying other people, there will be people, I find more often than not now, that will type messages to call off the bullies and tell them it's not appropriate and what's wrong with you. This person's simply trying to do the right thing. I see people type messages more than even speak up. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think that's just kind of a part of our world, and there's so much communication that goes on, via the internet world more than it does go face-to-face, which, again, I mean, I just kind of find that all really sad, because I do think that the screen time and everything does, it stunts levels of empathy in kids when they're, behind a screen. And, I do think it's a growing problem for sure.
You've and this is something you've written. I would love to see more stories on ordinary kids doing extraordinary things. Make this be the example and the ideal for kids. I concur. Why is it that we don't see more stories about ordinary kids doing extraordinary things? What do you think it is?
I don't know, Mark. I think it's kind of what the media, I think they have a big responsibility in that. And I think, we are a fear-based society, and it's kind of fed that way through the media, because I know so many amazing kids. There's so many instances of kids doing the right things. And I just think if we give more attention to that and make that be the ideal, that will become something that's more attractive to kids, rather than, there's so much coverage in the news and on the media of real life stories. And don't get me wrong, I do believe, they do have a place and they need to be honored and showcased. It just feels like it's very imbalanced, and there's not, it isn't balanced the other way to really show the positive,
That's the reason that you created the book series?
Yeah, absolutely. The first book series really is about empowering kids, and I just, when I became a parent, I just thought, wow, I could certainly do my job as a parent to, boost my children up and to encourage them and in all of those things when they fall. But let's face it, Mark, I'm not going to be beside them all the time. And so when they're out there in the world, as all kids should be, because that's how they learn, is on their own. I just really wanted to have a tool that they could kind of reflect back on with the lessons in the books, to really, believe in themselves and to accept other people and to respect differences, and really to help kind of foster and develop that level of empathy. Because I think at the end of the day, Mark, if kids have empathy and accountability, they're going to be okay. They're all going to stumble and fall, and things are going to happen. That's what life is. But, if you're missing those things, it's just a recipe for disaster, I think.
You started writing, I guess, writing and publishing a series of stories when your first son was 4.5 months old. And they were inspired by him, and you wanted the messages, and then it would be something he could read and attach to when he got older. So we're down the line. Has he read the book? Has he applied it? And what has he said to you about this?
Yeah, they are definitely things that we come up, and he's in grade 2 right now, and the books are really directed at a grade 2 level. So yeah, we've been doing a lot more talking about them lately, and where I live right now, today is actually Pink Shirt Day or Anti-Bullying Day, so we've talked a lot about that. And I do constantly bring it up, just because they're kids and they get in bad moods, and I just kind of try to reflect it back to them that they have a choice in how they feel, and a choice in what they choose to think about, and if they're in a bad mood, or and really just giving them that sense of ownership and empowerment over their own feelings. And, empathy is a big one, and I really try to, especially with my older son, just really praise him for the instances when he does get out there and be friends with, all kids. I'm so proud of that about him, and I just... so I think just praising them and kind of being really connected in their lives helps too. And
a big thing is, forgive me, a big thing seems to be talking to them. And you talk with your kids a lot. And I think that we need to speak to that, because in this whole issue, there's an awful lot to be said in this country for parents who are not fully engaged with their kids. There was a study that was done here that showed that parents who engage with their children on a daily basis with their schoolwork turn out a better student. I think sometimes people put their kids on automatic pilot, put them on a shelf, don't talk with them, and when they're not talking to them, they're not giving them that positive reinforcement so they can overcome things like bullying, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and I went to a wonderful presentation the other day by a fellow named Scott Rothermel, and he does Safer Schools Together, and he is a former policeman, and so he talked a lot about this, and he's actually like a liaison officer with the schools now, and so he's really well versed in all of these things with teenagers and younger people, and he said something interesting, and it really spoke to me about how the norm can be for parents to really be engaged when kids are in elementary school. They're there at the school, they get up in arms if they're, there's a little thing out of place in the class, and they're really, really, really involved. And then by the time it comes to middle school and high school, parents kind of check out, and as Scott said, that's the time when they need us the most. That's the time when they're craving boundaries. They need to have a safe place to come and talk to their parents and have that open dialogue, and to not feel like if they tell their parents something that's going on that they're going to, the parents are going to freak out and kind of take everything away, like just to have that place. And he mentioned too that kids often want to have that, say, oh, sorry guys, like I have an 11 o'clock curfew, well, that's kind of just how my mom and dad are. It's kind of our thing, right? Like it gives them that back door to have those boundaries. And, if kids know that their parents are engaged and involved and still there, then they have that support, because they're still going to stumble and fall. But, those stumbles and falls aren't going to be as scary or as bad if they have a trusted adult and somebody there to thoughtfully discuss these things with.
Your two sons are, 2.5 years apart? Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Have either of them been victims? Have they ever been bullied and then finally came home and told mom about it?
No, we haven't had that come up. I mean, I think, too, the word bully gets kind of thrown around a lot more than it should. Like, sometimes there's mean behavior, there are, conflicts that can come up with kids, and that's not really what bullying is. And I think, we need to kind of get back, and I'm not saying there isn't bullying, because there most certainly is. We do need to get back to kind of dealing with the behavior and having appropriate consequences and conversations around what a behavior is. If it's, two kids having a disagreement and whatever, if an adult can, say, we'll use younger kids as an example, if an adult can go in there and kind of talk to the kid and see, what's going on and whatever, and the kid doesn't even realize that they're having this effect on another child, and then they feel some empathy and they feel bad about that. Well, that's not bullying. That's more of like a conflict, right? And then there's also mean behavior that can come up too. I think, I don't know. I think
you hit on something, yeah. Emily, and that is that the term bullying might be an overused term. Every time there's conflict or someone says something disrespectful or not positive, sometimes people register that as bullying. That's not bullying. I look at as repeated negative behavior that's destructive against somebody else, where they're
Absolutely. And the problem with that too, Mark, on the other side of things, is when somebody actually is getting bullied, because there are many people that get bullied, also the appropriate consequences aren't relayed. Because if bullying is mean behavior and it's also the actual real bullying, the repetitive power, imbalance kind of behavior, then the consequences aren't being played out how they should. Like when Scott came, he used a really powerful example. He actually showed us a real video clip of this girl getting bullied, and somebody on the other end, there was bystanders all around, and somebody was videotaping it the whole time and yelling really loud. And we were like, where are the adults? Like, the teachers and the people. And this poor girl, was totally getting bullied, and there was people standing beside her at her locker, just kind of flicking around, zero empathy, like nobody standing up for her. And then they were like, punch her, and the girl went and punched this poor girl, and she fell on the ground, and, it resulted in a suspension. Well, and Scott had a really good example. He said, why don't we deal with the behaviors and things with the appropriate consequences? That was that wasn't, bullying. That was like assault. So call the police.
No kidding.
Get them in and book it as an assault. Like, have that kid and the kids are, that were on the end of the videotape, have them arrested. Go through that process of what it's like to be fingerprinted. And, maybe they won't end up, depending on age, in the systems, and maybe the systems aren't the best place for them. But I tell you, that'll speak a lot more powerfully than being sent home for 2 days, where they're just sitting behind their smartphones continuing the same behavior.
So it sounds like we're by accident or on purpose, we're somehow sending a signal that we're not serious about correcting the wrongs that are done against people. In other words, if somebody victimizes somebody else and they're caught, speak out about it. And you have to send a signal that you're going to discourage this behavior by putting adequate punishment behind the person who committed this act against another person.
I believe so, and stop labeling everything as bullying.
Yeah.
Like, deal with the behavior as it is. Like, you know what I mean? Because,
I think you've hit on something, that the term bullying is overused to describe what may be unpleasant or rude behavior. Bullying is a series of events that defines what bullying is. Let me ask you about a book that you wrote called Sam's Magic Mirror, which really is apparently a confidence builder from what I recall. This is a young person who was nominated to be, I think, a class president. It kind of reminds me of your story, because you were elected class valedictorian, but you were so afraid to speak, you passed an opportunity, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I mean, that was later on in life, but
Right.
I guess there's some parallels there for sure.
Big time. That's what I thought when I saw this.
Yeah.
What does this book attempt to do?
Well, it's about, fostering friendships and really about owning our differences and owning our unique abilities and gifts. And, not for girls, I think, and for boys, there's so often the case where we want to be like our neighbor, when we're growing up. And it's kind of like we're never really proud of what it is that, and I don't mean never, but, there is this instance that goes on where we're not, proud of what it is that we bring to the table. So it's really about, just owning who we are and being proud of that, and also equally embracing other people for their gifts. I think if there was more of that done in the world, it would eliminate a lot of this, not respecting people for the unique things that they bring to the table.
Well, when we first mentioned Pink Shirt Day the other day, it brought forth a whole series of comments from listeners who said, you wear a pink shirt, you deserve to be beaten up. Now, they were kidding, but I felt that there was also a fraction of truth in this. What is Pink Shirt Day, and what is it supposed to do?
Yeah, well, first off, I just want to say, I think people hide behind their phones and laptops, and, it's like an easy way, to type out a bunch of things. Like, would they really actually say that to your face?
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? But anyway, that's just an aside. But Pink Shirt Day was actually originated in Canada, and it was 2 young boys, and I love this story. They were in grade 9, and there was one of their classmates was being bullied, most certainly being bullied for wearing pink. And so these 2 boys who were, seen as popular in their class, took a stand against that, and so they went and they got pink shirts, and they had 50 other shirts made and brought them to school as a way of having a rally and of saying, like, standing up and respecting the right to be different and to be who you are and to wear, be, do, have, look who who and how you are. And so that was in 2007, and it's grown hugely. And in fact, the United Nations in 2012 with these children as an example have made an official day as anti-bullying day, or pink, known as Pink Shirt Day. And so there's, over 25 countries around the world that celebrate this day and that raise funds. And so those funds will go into different programming into the schools that, here where I live, we have this program called Roots of Empathy. So they come in at a kindergarten level and start looking at the 4 pillars of empathy, and they bring a brand new baby from the community, and the mom will come in and they teach at a grassroots level, they teach children about empathy. And so all of these funds go into these programming. And it's all because these two kids, stood up for another kid that was being bullied and did the right thing. I think it's an amazing story.
Before we go, what can you tell us? I know you did a lot of research on this. What can you tell us about something called Tune It Out, Blue Shirt World Day of Bullying Prevention? Where does that happen?
I'm not sure. Is that something that I sent you?
Yes.
Well,
let me see what I can. Let me do a quick edit. Sorry to do that. It's National Bullying Awareness Month as well as Pink Shirt Day. Other activities include handouts, resources, and information created to promote the message of the National Day of Action Against Bullying and Violence. Examples of other activities include a race conference, conferences, video creating competitions such as the Screen It and the Back Me Up competition, community events, all used to spread awareness of bullying and violence. This addresses the issue, Emily, that I think that you were speaking of earlier about speaking up. If you see somebody being bullied and you know it's bullying, it's not just rude behavior, speak up and fight back, and then the bullying stops.
Absolutely. And spread the stories of the things that kids are doing that are so great, because there's so many stories of that.
Like a true mom, it being said.
Yeah.
EmilyMadill.com on the internet is where you'll find Emily Madill, who is a proud contributor to the Bernier program. Miss Emily, thank you for the time today. We appreciate you once again.
Thanks, Mark. It's a passionate topic for me, so I appreciate it.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, you bet. Bye-bye.
Up.